Had that in a long time. Providing over 1,000 service hours to the community this Rotary year that I was in. We were recognized by the Florida Georgia Blood Alliance as the #1 service organization donor in the entire area. We initiated the landmark Centennial Service Project, which you heard a lot about, to develop the first candid ball field ever in North Florida. Now, that doesn't mean that we completed it. This is when we started the project and we started bringing in a lot of money. Another thing, we were recognized and awarded 13 police officers for outstanding community service. We had suburban fellowship events, including the first and largest visit to a new Jacksonville baseball park. And that means we all went out there and had a blast at first. And we were the only ones there when they first opened it up. We completed 3 rural service projects in the Dominican Republic, Argentina, and Brazil. Overall foundation giving the largest in club history, a total of $34,210.52. That's incredible. Over 33 members qualified for Paul Harris Fellow this year. We increased total club Paul Harris fellowships from 63 to 68. We had 10 individuals qualified for Centennial Paul Harris Fellow. How many serial? How many of those do we have right now? You know what I'm talking about? Good number. We also had a golf outing on 103rd Street where we got $12,000 more profit that we did. We continued as a leader in district youth exchange program with a host for both short and long-term students involving 6 different countries. It was a great year. We had a lot of fun doing it. That's what we did. And oh, by the way, come over to the United States. We really need to change the flag, you know, because it's just a big white thing that we passed out and everything else. But we changed it to this, which is also white there. So that's the new flag that we've been using for a long time.
Bill, as we go forward, it's very important that you register RSVP for in-person meetings. I know there was a problem with the link this week, but we shouldn't have that going forward. Next week is a Zoom meeting. The program will be First Tee. A couple of people from First Tee will be presenting. And then the following week, we'll be back here live, hybrid. Salvation Army bell ringing results. We rang the bell of Salvation Army December. We raised just under $1,000, $976.93 to be exact. We've already got the date for this year's December 4th. We'll be in public seeing ringing the bell. Also, if anybody has any interest, President Mary Pat wanted me to share that we have a Zoom meeting on a webinar February 23rd at 6 p.m. It's going to be hosted by past Rotary International President Barry Rassin, and it's going to be Zone 34's webinar, The Impact of Foundation Giving. So we all know that our dues and our fees that we pay, just a portion covers lunch. A lot of it goes to do good in the world and in our community. So it's a real inspiring program, kind of share in detail what some of that money is doing to some of those programs, how some of those programs are impacting people. I'd like to call Seth Williams up for Family Rotary.
Thank you, Ike, and thank everybody at home, and thank everybody for being here. I just wanted to make a couple announcements for Family of Rotary. If anybody wants to stop off afterwards or raise their hand, let me know if there's anything I'm not including. Please do. There was a note passed from the North Jacksonville Rotary Club, the passing of one of their members far too soon, and they're going to have remembrance of his life. That was a Mr. Fred Allison. I don't know how many of you knew Fred. Fred worked for Dex Imaging. I actually met Fred personally and was just a really super guy, really nice guy, willing to help anybody in business and increase their sort of operations in office and make sure things were streamlined. He was always there to help and offer. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that may want to attend. That's going to be, the remembrance will be Saturday, February 6th at 5259 Hammock Lake. That's in the 32226 zip code from 1 to 3. So that's this Saturday, February 6th. I also wanted to wish happy birthdays for Barry Allred, who's on the 1st. Jeffrey Raynor is the 4th of February, and happy birthday also to Ryan Crabtree on the 4th. And if anybody else has anything to share, that's what I've got for Family of Rotary birthday. Appreciate it.
Exactly. Sergeant Barnes Dane, would you mind coming up to the podium and giving your report?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's an honor to go ahead and introduce our visiting guests and Rotarians. First and foremost, Jeff Raynor has a guest.
Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Doug Sovich. He works for Duval Ford as the commercial sales director, and he's been with us for a year now. He's a fellow Rotarian, and we're just happy to have him.
All right, and Ricky Cruz is visiting from Northjax. Stand up, Ricky. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and tell a joke this evening. It's been a little while, and I'm gonna try to make it Rotary appropriate. So there's a clerk in the grocery store, and one of the patrons walks up and says, "Very sorry, I can't seem to find the broccoli." So the clerk looks at her and says, "Well, that's because we don't have any. I'm very sorry, we ran out this morning." So the lady understood, she walked away. She came back a few minutes later, and she said, "Sir, I really can't seem to find the broccoli." And so the clerk looks back at her and says, "Well, I'm very sorry, ma'am, for any inconvenience, but we'll have some tomorrow." She walks away, and 5 minutes later, she says, "Sir, I cannot find the broccoli." So the clerk stopped and looked at her and said, "Can you spell catastrophic with a C in it?" She said, "Of course, CATASTROPHIC." He said, "Very good. Can you spell dogmatic with a D in it?" She said, "Of course, DOGMATIC." And then he said, "Now I want you to spell broccoli with an F in it." And she said, "But there is no F in broccoli." And he said, "That's what I've been trying to tell you." That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dave. All right. Introduce our program today. Our speaker today is Tom O'Malley. Tom has been part of the transportation industry in Jacksonville for more than 20 years. He's a transplant from Pennsylvania. He has owned and operated TJO Cargo since its founding in 2007. TJO Cargo services service freight forwarders, third parties, cargo owners with cargo risk mitigation and cargo insurance. The company also maintains a consulting role in customer management service. Tom also benefits from 19 years of truck brokerage experience. His work with Intercontinental Logistics, specializing in hard-to-route inland transits for imports and exports, gives him an end-to-end way of thinking when it comes to logistics and transportation. In addition, Tom has authored 3 books, which I have here, my copies. The Cargo Nerd's Bathroom Companion, Letter to the Coronavirus, and required reading in my office, Biznanians. He has a wealth of cargo, logistics, and transportation knowledge, both international and nationally, and he's a go-to guy that I use for information and knowledge. He's just a wealth of knowledge. So I'd like to bring Tom up to share what's going on with transportation and logistics at this time in the coronavirus environment. Tom O'Malley.
Thanks for the introduction, Ike. I understand Ike was here in June talking about the subject. Where we were then. At that point in time, it was a supply side problem. I want to pick up where I left off. You can consider me Ike Sherlock the sequel, the better looking sequel, the funnier sequel. we all expected a surge in freight after I spoke in June. So there were a lot of back orders on the floor in China waiting to get shipped, and they were shut down for coronavirus just like we were. We expected the surge, we expected it to come because we had the freight coming. We were also ordering personal protection equipment like it was going out of stock for the surge to come. Something happened that no one really expected. The surge stayed here. Freight kept on coming and coming and coming. That was an exercise in technology of the day and human condition. When we had the surge, we were all told to stay home. Our offices shut down, the schools shut down, all through March and April, everything shut down. And no one thought that there was going to be a lot of buying going on. America was on one knee. Well, the human condition said we were home. And technology today was, even at the worst of times, 85% of us kept on working. 14.7% in April was the unemployment rate, and it went down from there. So something happened that no one expected. We started buying things. Instead of going out and enjoying experiences like we would normally before the shutdown, which would be restaurants, going away for the weekend, going on vacations, concerts, we were home spending money. Amazon was on the they had to buy new trucks to take their money to the bank. That created the surge, and the continuing surge to this day. I mean, you can look at things like home updates, maybe sliding glass doors, screened-in porches, new flooring, and a lot of people staying home had to buy things to stay home. A lot of people never worked from home before. They had to buy computers, they had to buy headsets, they had to buy earbuds, they had to buy scanners, and maybe new hobbies. Maybe a winemaking hobby. Maybe it's just stay home and make wine. And all those things are just me. Before I came over here today, I tallied up what I bought during the shutdown, during the stay-at-home orders that was directly related to me staying home. And my figure was about $7,500. That everything added up in those several months. It may not sound like much. It may not sound like it's got to bump the needle at all. But considering there's 122 million households in this country, with 2.5 people apiece, with varying degrees of buying power, yeah, it's going to bump the needle. So this fills the pipeline with freight from China or Asia to the USA. And one of the things that's going to happen with that is going to create congestion. There's a couple different types of congestion going on. The first one starts in China. They've been shipping us things now since late June. I think the surge really started maybe early July. And we're not shipping empty containers back to them. The empty containers are stuck here in the US. So the Chinese have nothing to put in the containers. If you keep in mind, there's a container shortage set up every day of the week, every year. For every 3 containers the Chinese send out as an export, they only take it 1 as an import. Typically, they send vessels out, which are called sweeper vessels. And just like the name really indicates, they sweep up the empty containers globally, take them back to China to fill up. But with the port congestion we're experiencing, which you know by the news, all the vessels parked off the coast in LA. I don't mean to pick on LA and Los Angeles and Long Beach, but they're the poster child for port congestion right now. Last count I heard was 40 vessels out anchored at sea, and 35 of them are container vessels. That's a lot of vessels. That's about 3 times the normal rate that they had. And well, formerly they stayed out there 2-3 days max. Now they're talking 2 weeks before they get their port call. So between the Chinese being off schedule by having no empty containers and us buying a lot and having a 30% higher import rate through LA than we previously had, there's a lot of congestion. But like any great success or any great epic failure, it's never just one thing. It's never just the import surge. There's other things that go into it. I'm already over here. I was at a red light. And a little sign popped down. Due to COVID-19, red light waiting times are longer than normal. That's everybody everywhere. You see it on the phone, or see it on the internet, you hear it on the phone, you see signs in the stores, due to COVID, we can't service you properly. It's all because people aren't able to go to work like they used to. There are labor shortages. The ports, LA and Long Beach are not immune to this. Moreover, it's not just the longshoremen that are untrained, the cheap labor. It's the skilled labor. It's the machine operators. It's the crane operators. These are the folks that make the place tick. They can't get enough. The equipment imbalance also includes chassis. You go on the highway, you see the trucks, the containers on them. Those wheel sets underneath those trucks are chassis. When you have a flow of freight and the flow of freight is upset, there's always a cause and effect. So the containers coming in to the port are delayed at the port. There's 3 dwell times for containers. The first dwell time is when it hits the terminal, when the vessel side is getting unloaded. That's called vessel dwell time. Vessel dwell time is increased because of the congestion. The next dwell time is terminal dwell time. That's how long the container stays in the terminal. That's not only increased, that's doubled. That's up to 5 days now, where it used to be 2.5. And the third dwell time is street dwell time. Street dwell time is once that container is finally processed and hits the street, how many days is it out? It's gone from 3.5 to over 7 days on average. If you get those 3 dwell times, you just add them up, it makes the problem worse. And I did say that Amazon couldn't get their money fast enough, which means that they want their freight, but that's not every retailer. Every retailer doesn't want their freight. Bricks and mortar retailers that aren't Home Depot and Walmart don't want their freight. They may have ordered it before the pandemic. Their distribution centers are full, but they still have freight to the doorstep. So they try to slow it down. They'll put it in warehouses or store containers out by the port. That's keeping those containers longer. If they're not getting unloaded, they're not getting back to the port, they're not getting back to China, it's not coming back to us. The circle just isn't a circle anymore. It's a one-way street. The big question here for the congestion is, how long is it going to last? I see a lot of articles and I see a lot of people talking about the congestion out the port. And they say, well, Chinese New Year is going to come and China's going to shut down, and that's going to be able to give the ports time to catch up. And there's usually a lull in imports after Chinese New Year, March, April, May, June. There's usually a slowdown, and that's going to give the ports time to catch up. And I agree. If it was 2019, I'd wholeheartedly agree. But it's not 2019, it's 2021. In 2020, there was no slowdown from March, or from June through July. And I don't expect to slow down for 2021. There's too much happening. Americans are still buying too much cargo. What's going to fix the congestion out of the port? And take that 35 container vessels out of the port and trim that down to about 10 or 12. And be able to get you your freight faster is the imports are going to have to slow down. That's the answer. The imports are going to have to slow down. The big question is, are the imports going to slow down? And it may not be that easy of a question to answer. I can tell you that the steamship lines and the big retailers think that it's not going to slow down. The spot rates for cargo from Asia to the United States are sky high. And big retailers don't buy cargo at spot rates, at the highest rates. Big retailers buy their transportation services via contract. They have yearly contracts. Like anything, you sign a contract, you get it cheaper. They take advantage of this. But the contract prices are always tied to the spot rates. The spot rate's here, the contract rate is here. The spot rate's here, the contract rate is here. And every retailer that was surveyed is expecting to pay more for transportation in 2021 they did in 2020 and 2019 because of the import surge. So they expect it to keep on going. And they're negotiating right now. This is not like I'm talking about last year. This is not like I'm talking about next year. Their contracts expire in May, typically. And their negotiations usually take place March and April. And we're right at the cusp of it, and they're saying we're expecting to see sky high. And there's also another indication that people think this is going to keep on going. But I'm not a genius, but I can sure read what other people write. There's something called the Purchasing Manager's Index. The Purchasing Manager Index is a survey of 900 of the country's purchasing managers. They're selected specially to be able to get their opinion on what they think is going to happen. And the index is a 0 through 100 index. 0 being, I think this is maybe the worst negative growth ever, and 50 being neutral. I don't think there's going to be growth. I don't think there's going to be shrinkage. And anything above 50 is a belief that there is going to be an increase in import volume and productivity. Right now, the PMI index is sitting right at 60. It's pretty optimistic. I mean, these people are not just people off the street. These are our country's purchasing managers. And how optimistic is the number? It hasn't been 60 or above since August of 2018. So they think it's going to continue. And the ocean carriers think it's going to continue. They ordered vessels in the fourth quarter of 2020. They're buying. Now, are they overbuying? No, I'm sure not. But the simple fact that the ocean carriers are buying more vessels would indicate that they believe there's going to be freight for them to carry. Also, nothing has changed yet. People are saying, how long is the import surge going to last? Well, if nothing's changed, why would anything change with the import surge? Most people are still mostly staying home. No one's filling the Jaguar Stadium for football games. No one's going to rock concerts. Vacations are down 80%. We're still largely staying home, and we're still largely buying things on Walmart.com and Amazon. And the last thing is a political influence. Politically, our government is thinking about, we haven't done it yet, but injecting more cash into our society. There's going to be another stimulus check, according to the news. And that gives Americans more money, more discretionary money. But again, we're not broke. The majority of people aren't broke. Some people are, but the majority are not. And they're going to get a check as well. That's discretionary spending. All that translates to more buying and more imports. Even if something is made in the United States, Dime will get you $1 that the parts come from China or somewhere in Asia. If I had to guess, and I'm going to because I can, this surge is probably going to last to the end of this year. Again, that normal dip that they're talking about after February, I don't think it's going to come. And neither do the steamship lines and neither do the PM purchasing managers. Nothing has changed. So you're going to see this import surge come to the end of the year. What does it mean to you? It means that that washer that you want to buy might not be available. It means you may have to wait. It means that if you order bicycles, you're going to have to wait for them. Generally. And the surge is going to keep profit margins high for the steamship lines. And I said they're going to buy more vessels. When you're thinking about ocean rates, and buying ocean cargo, rates count, especially for freight cargo that is not expensive cargo and takes up a good amount of room. A $3,000 rate and a $5,000 rate make a difference in the cost. And you would think with the ocean carriers buying more vessels, it's going to increase capacity and bring down prices. That's not the way it particularly works. In trucking, it works that way. Capacity versus demand sets the equilibrium for where the price is going to be. Unfortunately, to reduce capacity in trucking companies have gone out of business. Well, it's not that way in the ocean. In 2017, the ocean carriers formed alliances. They had to do business more efficiently. They had to do business and be able to make a better profit. So none of them went belly up. And in these alliances, the ocean carriers did make things more efficient. But one of the byproducts of the alliance is it also allowed them to cooperate together in setting capacity. No matter how many vessels they have, it doesn't matter. It matters how many vessels they have in service. So the ocean carriers get to set their own supply and demand equilibrium by controlling how many vessels they have out in service. And if they find out the supply is waning a little bit, they'll take vessels out of service. So look for ocean rates to remain high throughout the rest of 2021 and probably in 2022. And for our own JAXPort didn't get the surge of freight like LA is getting, like Savannah is getting, like New York is getting. JAXPort actually took a little bit of a beating for 2020. At the very best, they had to tread water. JAXPort was hit by the Caribbean slump. The trade lane between the United States and the Caribbean fell apart because the Caribbean is the vacation business. They sell experiences. We stopped buying experiences. So the trade lane, well, whether you know it or not, JAXPort is the main port for the trade lane between the United States and the Caribbean. So the JAXPort was able to come out as well as they did with a 5% loss in cargo volume, I believe it was. Don't quote me on that one. Did a good job. And they're probably going to be fine, maybe just fine for 2021. They're not going to recover immediately. But look for big things coming to JAXPort in 2022. There's a couple of things going on. One is, if you read the newspaper or read the newspaper, we're dredging the channel. We're going to have a 47-foot channel. That's going to allow 14,000 TEU vessels. TEU is what's called a 20-foot equivalent. 1 40-foot container is 2 TEUs. The JAXPort is going to find themselves in a very good position. Number one, they're the one port on the East Coast that has room to grow. They have room to expand. And number two, all those back orders that we all experienced during Christmas and into this year. Don't think for a minute that Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, didn't look at his supply chain manager and say, why are all my orders late? Why are my customers not getting their goods? And the supply chain looked at him and said, well, Mr. Bezos, 70% of our cargo comes in through Long Beach and Los Angeles port. Long Beach and Los Angeles are responsible for 32% of the total influx of freight in our country for imports. So Jeff Bezos is going to look for ways to be able to put some continuity to the supply chain. And not just Jeff Bezos. It's going to be Target, it's going to be Walmart. We're going to look to set up some new lanes of traffic and supply chains. And Jacksonville in 2022 is a prize. It's going to have a deep channel. It's going to have room to expand. The rail connection is here. The highway connection is here. So when it comes time for a new port to be able to add on to a e-retailer or Walmart's list of ports, JAXPort is going to be a go-to. So I look for a big 2022 coming out of JAXPort. So on the side of supply chain, do we have any questions on that? Yes, sir.
I got a question about security. The longer you have product in the supply chain, does it increase the vulnerability to theft or damage or anything else?
Something close to my heart, yes, it does. As freight gets stored, as freight gets delayed, containers go into more remote places. Where originally they may have been stored on the terminal, they can't be stored in the terminal anymore. So they're going to go to an off-site warehouse or an off-site terminal yard. And they get pretty remote. Thieves can take the door off a container in less than 15 minutes to be able to empty it out. And even for containers that are empty, the port terminal in a container is always safer than freight that's been transloaded into a warehouse. So yes, it does create a theft risk. And also, anytime freight gets handled more times than it has to be, creates a damage risk. It's why truckload freight is a safer way to send cargo than LTL freight, or less than truckload. It's not that LTL freight is bad, it's not that the companies are bad, but if I'm gonna ship something to Scranton, Pennsylvania, to Joe Biden's old house, and I put it on a truckload truck, when they close the doors, that's the last time that cargo sees the freight the light of day until it gets to the destination. If I ship it LTL, we'll close the door on the same freight, and it's gonna go from my dock door to the terminal downtown Scranton, or downtown Jackson. From there, it's gonna go up to Atlanta. And be translated into a different warehouse for the LTL carrier, to go onto a line haul truck, to go up to Philadelphia or Allentown, to go onto a new truck to go to Scranton. Every time that cargo is handled, the higher the risk of damages. Same thing applies to ocean freight. The longer it sits around, the more times it gets handled, greater risk of theft and damage. Yes, sir.
A moment ago, when you talked about Jacksonville's got the deep channels to, sorry. Thank you. A moment ago, you talked about in 2022, one of the benefits is that Jacksonville will have the deep channels.
Yes.
To accomplish where we want to go and where we can go, is there more dredging that has to happen in the river to accomplish that feat?
Ultimately, yes, there's more dredging that could be done, but there's only so much dredging that will be done. There's an environmental factor and there's a cost factor. If they get it to Blunt Island or somewhere close to it, they're golden.
Okay.
I mean, they are golden. So what we're going to see by the end of 2022 is likely going to be it. And yes, sir. Oh,
Quickly, without you having to put out the disclaimer that you're not responsible for anybody's faulty investments if they do. You see any opportunities in the market as far as, anybody that's savvy, day trading, investing, just to look at sort of niche sectors that we may not spy from the outside?
Oh, an investment question. GameStop. GameStop is a way I would buy like you get right now. Third-party transportation companies are going to be a good buy. I wouldn't so much, the ocean carriers will be a good buy forever, but you're not going to get rich with them. They are like the old GE. Remember the old GE? We invested? GE was stable, but nobody was getting rich overnight. When you have transportation, the ocean carriers are like that. Third-party logistics companies, because they're not asset-based, are almost bulletproof to recessions, and they can grow the fastest. So if you can find yourself some third-party logistics companies that are not all that well established, that are software-driven, they would be a day trader's investment. Wouldn't be my investment, but a day trader's.
Do you read the tea leaves
Oh,
with Amazon building all these distribution warehouses in Jacksonville? I think they're almost up to 20 now is what the last count I saw. These huge distribution. Do you see that as an indicator that we're going to start getting a lot more traffic through the port? So take them off from the Connex and take them over to the distribution centers to distribute?
if the idea that I laid out earlier, that Jacksport is going to be a player, they have the opportunity to be a player. There's no doubt about it. And I'll use Amazon, but this could be any e-seller right now. They will be looking for new ports. And it's not just as easy as switching ports quickly. You just don't switch ports so quickly because it costs too much money. The infrastructure is not there. The supply chain pipeline is not there. You just can't say, well, take everything to Jacksonville instead. No, it has to be built up, and it has to be planned, and it has to have the infrastructure put in. So if what I said earlier plays out, as far as Amazon giving Jacksonville a serious look to be a port of entry, I absolutely believe that there could be. I absolutely believe that there can be an impact because they're not going to go to Savannah. Savannah, 80% of Home Depot's freight goes into Savannah. It's already full. It's already taxed. And Charleston's too far north. And if you're ever driven from Charleston to get all the way to 95, you kill an An hour is a long time, and getting to the railroads is an hour. So I see a lot of infrastructure that's going to be needed, a lot of increased traffic because of ideas just like yours, the Amazon's impact. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of traffic that goes on, especially out towards Cecil Field and all, and it's all aviation related. And the things that we see out there are the things that really they're taking aircraft that used to bring passengers around and they're chopping them up or either giving them a new routine and they're bringing other things instead of people. Do you see aviation as even playing in this game?
The cargo, aviation's always played a role in cargo. And aviation playing a role in cargo, it's always been specific freight, a specific cargo. It's usually small and expensive. No one's gonna ship Georgia clay in an aircraft.
Okay.
So I don't see aircraft taking over the industry. Yes, they've carved themselves a new niche or a new role, absolutely. They do take seats out of aircraft to prove that they can move cargo in an effective manner. But they're never gonna be as cost effective as a good old 14,000 TEU vessel coming across the ocean. If I'm your transportation manager, and your product is not small and very expensive, and I have to put it in an aircraft to get it to the United States or get it away from the United States, I'm not doing my job properly. It's as simple as that. So I don't see air cargo expanding that much up and above where it already is.
Tom, you mentioned the unplanned increase in ocean freight. Can you share a couple of examples of which you've seen ocean freight last year versus this year prices?
On the ocean freight, the rates are, the rates almost mirror the import surge. If you go to the port of LA and you go to, and I'm not talking month to month, I'm talking year over year. The port of LA for December or November, or October, as a matter of fact, October, the port of LA Long Beach set a record for volume. And that's a 114-year history. So the overall increase, let's say for December or November, December is like 30%. Ocean rates are following right past it. So instead of $3,500 or $3,800 to get from China to the U.S. for a container, you can click that up by $900. And ocean carriers play a really cool game. Even if they have a rate structure, even if you're a contract shipper and you say, well, I'm only going to pay $3,000 per TEU. If the ocean carriers find themselves behind the eight ball with pricing that they gave you, you become a very unpopular customer, and your freight will get frustrated. When I say frustrated freight is freight that ships on time, it goes out the doors on time, and it's supposed to be able to hit the LA port 2 weeks later, but frustrated freight doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because the deal they cut with you earlier in the year when they negotiated contracts isn't all that attractive for them anymore. So they'll let your container sit on the China side and they'll bump it. It's called rolling to the next vessel. Rolling to the next vessel, that's exactly what it is. So your freight will slow down and then they get a surcharge out of it. Well, for a certain surcharge per container, we'll get your containers, we'll put it in the front of the line. So they're gonna get their money no matter what. So that 30% is gonna hold, that 30% increase is gonna hold no matter what. Which I know those charges leave the contract rates almost immaterial.
Any other questions? Tom, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, Tom. Next week, we'll be on Zoom. It'll be the first two folks. Week after, we'll be in person here again, hybrid, meeting here, also we'll be Zooming. Dane, thank you. Thanks to Dane and Patty for pension, for Marshall, and getting everything working today. Appreciate everybody being on Zoom. Appreciate you being here, Tom. Any other announcements for the club? Phil, thank you for the president's minute. Really, really good. And he mentioned that this club, and Phil's your chartered with Baker County Club, and I was a charter member of that club. So Thanks for bringing me into Rotary. Appreciate it. I don't have a mallet.
We were told that your boss told you had to do that, and your boss happened to be the head guy in this district, is that right?
Yes, yeah, Tommy Grimes
Yeah.
told me to do it, and I always do what Tommy Grimes tells me to do. That's good advice for anybody. If there's no further business for the good of the club, today's quote is, "No legacy is so rich as honesty." William Shakespeare. Oh, I'm sorry. I always miss a four-way test.
For the loud one. We're filming this four-way test for the district, so a little more volume for Marshall, I appreciate it all. I'm filming here. All right, the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it true? Second, is there a concern? Third, fourth, thank you.